You are listening to the Small Town Big Talk Show, the weekly podcast for small town people with big dreams and ideas. I'm your host, Rebecca Undem, and each week we'll cover a topic meant to inspire, encourage, and empower you to live big in your small town. Although it has its challenges, nothing beats small town living, and we're committed to sharing the best of what's working in the communities we serve. So enjoy this episode, and we hope it helps you to bloom where you've been planted. Hey everyone, if you're a Small Town Big Talk Show listener, you're likely the kind of person who likes to shake things up a little bit. Today I'm coming at you solo again. I was on vacation this last week and I had a lot of time to think about things. And I just felt like the timing of this might be helpful for you, just as it is for me. What I have been finding lately is a lot of what I've been sharing with you all are things that I need to keep in the forefront of my own mind as well. So as a listener of the show, you are, again, one of those people that probably pushes some envelopes. You might have more ideas than you know what to do with. And if you're anything like me, when you get a really big idea about something that you want to take on, like you want to tell everybody, right? And what we tend to envision is that everybody is going to be as enthusiastic as we are, and they're going to clamor for their opportunity to help you, and they're going to go way out of their way to make it happen with you. And then as you start to share it with people, something becomes pretty clear. Despite your intense enthusiasm and your genuine belief in what it is that you're pursuing, you find that not everyone shares that sentiment. And maybe what you start to feel is actually kind of unsupported. Now, sometimes the people that resist our ideas, they're external stakeholders. And by external, I just mean like they don't live in your house with you. So you've got community members or maybe committees that you feel like you need your quote unquote blessing. Like you feel like you need their blessing to move forward. And when it's those people that are just kind of like, you know, you need them, but they're not as close and personal to you, when they make us feel like they don't believe we're going to be able to do what we say we're going to do, or they present their doubts to us, it's really common to think, well, screw them then. Like, I'll show them, I don't need them. But what happens when the people with the doubts are internal stakeholders? They're the ones that actually do live in the four walls of our houses with us. What if the ones that are presenting doubts are our spouses or our families? And maybe you still have a bit of that rebellious little spirit of like, well, I'll show you. But today, I'm coming at you solo today because I want to share a few ways that we can all shift our thinking about the people who we think of as unsupportive. Because here's the truth, big ideas are always going to have some resistance. And when we go into our plan or our project or whatever it is that we're trying to get off the ground with this idea or this goal, the main goal of trying to prove people wrong, that's a negative energy. There's negative energy that surrounds the work that we're trying to do. And instead, I've got 4 ideas for you for how we can shift our own thinking about those people so that the energy doesn't become fueled from resistance, where we're saying, well, I'm going to show you, I'm going to prove it. There's something not as positive about that kind of energy. And I think that that's something that's really important to consider. So without further ado, here are the 4 ways that we can shift our thinking when we're dealing with people that we deem to be unsupportive. Okay, here we go. Number 1, try not to take it personally. Yeah, it's like so easy, right? I know that this is something all of us maybe have heard and we know that it's important. It's really a challenge to try not to take things personally, especially when our ideas might be the thing being challenged. But here's the thing, the people doubting you are not you. And their doubts are not about you. Obviously, this seems super clear. Like, thank you, Captain Obvious. Like, obviously, the people that are doubting us aren't us. But we really do need to remember this because every single one of us, when we're presented with something, anything, any idea, any thought, we bring our own experiences, we bring our own insecurities, we bring our own beliefs, and we bring our own worldviews to the table. So when you present your big idea to someone, all they are able to do, and this is true for every single one of us, all they are able to do is to offer feedback that is filtered through the lens of their own life. It isn't ever about you. Nothing anybody else actually ever does is about you. It is a projection of their own stuff. This is life. This is who we are. This is why it is so important when somebody says something to you that you don't carry it as though it's a personal attack. It's never about you. So try and separate yourself from the feelings that you're having. Try and separate yourself from the comments that are being made. If we can't put our ego aside, we're constantly going to feel unsupported. We're constantly going to feel criticized. We're constantly going to feel like we're being resisted against. And that is taking way too personal of an approach. When somebody, and again, we're going to move into like the next few ideas for you are going to be more about like, what do you do and how do you process it? But this is the first thing. And I will tell you without question, I really do struggle with this sometimes. The second you feel yourself getting defensive, that's your ego. And she or he, if you're a gentleman, of course, they're going to rear their head when you're so close to the thing and you care so passionately about the thing and your belief is so strong about the thing that you're trying to get done. But that defensiveness is your ego talking. And so as soon as you feel it, try to catch yourself, try to stop yourself, and then consider these other questions. Okay. So the first thing, when you feel like you're being faced with resistance or you feel like you're not being supported, is to try not to take it personally. Number 2, simply to ask more questions. This has obviously been a theme because, again, there's no benefit in making assumptions. But when we can ask some questions, we also then need to just listen without judgment, withhold judgment of what the person's going to say. And this is where we can really get to the heart of the other person's concerns, especially if, like we were talking at the beginning, if the person that feels like they may not be supporting, especially if they're your spouse, like you share not only a house, but a bed with that person, right? Like there's just no more intimate relationship imaginable. We tend to think that we know what they are thinking or what they're going to say. We assume with our loved ones, even more than we do with people we don't know, which is really sad. But we don't know what our spouses are thinking. We don't know what our mom's thinking. Like if it's a family member or someone really close to you, this is really, really important when the doubter is a loved one. To ask questions. We need to get to the heart of what their concerns really are, because more than likely, they simply have unresolved concerns or unanswered questions. This is where it's so important to recognize the difference between someone being unsupportive and someone being uncertain. So we can ask, tell me more. Like we can start by saying, tell me more about why you feel that way. Or we can ask the question, in what way? Help me understand. We can say those kinds of prompts to get them to better articulate what their concern is. Because here's the deal. Everyone has the right to be uncertain. And if we're open to it in this phase, when we're garnering support for our big idea, if we're open to hearing it, we can use the questions that these people have, whether they're, again, external or internal stakeholders. We can use those questions to further hone our plans and ideas. Those kinds of questions ultimately strengthen our position as long as we remain open to it. And this is the balance between, and I talked about this a bit in my email this week, is that, the balance between knowing that we can't do it all alone and wanting just to say, well, screw it, I'm doing it anyway. And wanting to feel like you're pursuing the thing you want to pursue without being like an actual outcast in your community. Those are challenging things to balance. It's one of the hardest things about living in a small town and trying to pursue something big. We're a little bit more on display than we are in larger cities. And we all know that. And that's why so many of us, I think we're afraid. We're literally paralyzed with fear to step out and do something that could be seen as, quote unquote, crazy. But these things can really help us as we're navigating this difficult part where we're trying to share the idea and get some support. So the second thing is to ask more questions, get to the heart of their concerns. Number 3, figure out what their bottom line is. We can always ask the question, what if we took the chance? So this, again, is particularly helpful when we're dealing with someone that's close to us. Don't get me wrong, this isn't the same as asking for permission. We don't have to say like, well, are you okay with me doing it? But you can ask the question, what would have to happen for you to become more comfortable with this? I actually said this to an external stakeholder because I could tell that they wanted to support this thing that I'm trying to get off the ground, but they don't get it, right? And so I simply said, what pieces feel unclear to you? Help me understand what still seems confusing or not well thought out. Like help me see where my gaps might be. And that's also a really disarming way to ask that question, right? Is to assume that you probably don't have every single angle covered. So tell me what it is that seems like a hole or a gap for you, and I'll try to fill it. And if you don't have an answer to it, they've actually helped you. They've helped you discover something that could be a problem down the road. So again, this is such a beautiful way to turn this resistance into something that actually is good for you. When we figure out what people's bottom lines are, we can usually work with it. And sometimes people just need to feel heard. This is kind of similar to that idea of figuring out the worst case scenario by actually asking, what's the worst thing that could happen if we do pursue this? And then if you play it all out, talk that all out, it usually softens the other person's fears a bit because, first of all, most of the time, the worst case scenario isn't actually all that likely to happen. But if you literally say it all comes down to yeah, but are we going to die from it? Or, that kind of a thing. What is truly the worst that can happen? And are we together willing to take those risks? The biggest thing is this is that opportunity to show to the other party that we view them as a partner rather than just somebody to prove wrong in the process. So number 3 is figure out what their bottom line is. And then number 4, we have to constantly remind ourselves that we can't do anything of any significance by ourselves. No man and no woman is an island. We're going to need support. And when it comes to big projects, we really don't need everybody to understand it, but we do need support. And for this particular one, I want to share with you a recent episode of the podcast that's called The Good Life Project. Jonathan Fields shared in it, I can't even remember what it was called. I'll link to it in the show notes. It was basically how to succeed at anything. And he shares these 8 P's to succeeding at anything. And honestly, I highly recommend you listening to this if you are pursuing big things in 2020. It's a great episode. And again, I'll put the link right in the show notes, but it's called The Good Life Project. It's one of his most recent ones. And the title, something along the lines of how to succeed at anything. But one of the 8 P's that he suggested we need to succeed at anything is people. And he offers 6 different roles that he suggests we are going to need in our corner if we're going to succeed at something big. They don't all have to be different people, but I'm sharing these with you because sometimes the people that we see as unsupportive might be playing one of these roles. And if we look at it this way, we can see it as a gift instead of something to be resisted against. So here's the 6 roles. Number 1, co-strivers. So S-T-R-I-V-E-R-S, strivers. These are a group of people or a person that is doing something similar to what you're trying to take on, and you're going through it together. It's like working in parallel to this person. Basically, what this person or people can do for us in this really tricky, difficult thing where we're pursuing something that's going to take time and energy and a lot of resources is that they'll give us somebody to commiserate with. It's the beautiful part of finding people who are doing something similar. It doesn't have to be the same thing. So like an example he gave was if you choose to train for a marathon, his example was, if you join up a support group of people who are also training for a marathon, especially if you're a first timer, right? Suddenly you're with a group of people that are also striving for the same goal and you're doing it in parallel. You might not be running the same race. They might be halfway across the world from each other, but you're experiencing a lot of the same pitfalls and difficulties and challenges. So finding somebody that can commiserate with you, and that person plays the role of a co-striver. The second is champions. These are legitimately your straight up cheerleaders. They will pick you up when you're down. They're always behind you. And they're the ones, literally imagine them with, pom-poms going you can do it. And that's it. So this is where I really encourage you to think about the people in your life. And we'll get all the way through the roles and then we'll come back to how to really think about these. But there are people in our lives, especially our loved ones, that maybe the only role they should play is champion. When you recognize what their role is, then there's certain things you don't have to share with them because you're not expecting them to play any role other than to just cheerlead you and pick you up. I'll give you an example. My husband, he absolutely supports me, but cheerleading it's not his gift. He plays some of these other roles that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But when I know that, then I don't go to him expecting him to be that person in my life. It's really important to think about this. So number 2, champions. They're the ones that will cheerlead you. Number 3, accountants. These are the people it's exactly what they're going to do. They're the people that hold you accountable. They know you. They know your purpose. They know the mission of what you're trying to accomplish. They're the ones that are going to remind you of the reasons that you started. And they're going to be the ones that say, you said you were going to do this, now do it. So here's a quick note. And Jonathan Fields, this was his note. He said, very rarely are your champions and your accountants the same person. And again, this is where, as you think about this and you think about the people in your life and you think about who plays this role for me, I think I said this already. They don't have to be different people, but these are the two roles that really probably ought to be different people. But it's so helpful to think like, do I have these people in my life? And if not, where will I find them? How will I find them? How will I get the support that I need? Okay, so number 3 was accountants. Number 4, mentors. These are the people who have had already invested a lot of time advising other people through the work that you're taking on, or they've actually done it themselves. These are the people that they draw upon their own experience and they offer wisdom. At the beginning of the podcast episode that I'm referencing right now, Jonathan Fields did say that you maybe won't have all 6 of these roles all the time, but that they are very important. Mentors can be very hard to find. I would absolutely say that it can be really tricky, but it's important to not confuse, somebody that's actually done it themselves, or like thinking of a co-driver as a mentor, for example. A co-driver is going through it at the same time as you are. They can't mentor you through it. A mentor is somebody that has more experience than you do, achieving the thing that you're chasing down. Number 5, community. These are the people that see you and accept you as you are, and they offer you a sense of belonging. Even if you struggle, they'll embrace you and they'll accept you. And he flat out said, like, co-drivers and champions, they might play this role. So again, you maybe aren't going to have 6 distinctly different people, but it's just really important to recognize that having a sense of belonging, it isn't even about what it is that you're doing. They are just going to love you regardless. Maybe you really don't even talk to them that much about your project or your thing. These are your people. Community is your people, the people that will love you regardless of what's happening. And then number 6, I loved this one so much, and he shared this, that he added this one after a period of time due to somebody else's work. And the 6th role is challengers. These people are the ones that are there to challenge you. So again, these people know you. They know your plan. They're very smart, but they're the ones that are willing to challenge your assumptions, because we never see things fully clearly. We can almost never be objective about our own stuff. So this role, they're the ones that are there to help us optimize our ideas. He made this reference to how, and I've always said, I get too close to my own stuff. I get asked a lot of questions about writing books because I wrote one, right? And the thing that I always say is, don't skimp on an editor. Get a good editor, because we get too close to our own stuff and we can't be objective. We're just too close to it. The example that he gave this metaphor or analogy. He said, it's like being inside of a jar and trying to read the label. That's how hard it is to be objective about our own things. So we need that objectivity to ensure that we aren't missing things. And this is so important. As we're sharing our vision or the purpose behind our big idea, we need to be looking for people that might be filling these roles. Thinking about, and you think about the first time you get resistance and asking yourself, can this person be a challenger for me? Can they be a person that pokes holes in it, that finds gaps, that helps me see what's missing? The biggest key with this and these 6 roles is that not all of the resistance that you're going to get, not all of it means these people are going to be playing these roles. Because this is where, trying to decide, does the feedback I'm getting, does it add value or help me or make me better? Or is it just people criticizing? Only you can really decide that. But I feel like these 6 roles give us a way to kind of filter it out and say, does this feedback fit into one of these things? Can I learn from it? Can I get better from it? If it's people that have never done anything in their lives, they've never taken a chance on anything, if they don't have a station in life that you find enviable, you don't admire them, you don't think they seem all that smart, those are the kinds of people that you can just say, thank you for your feedback and let it go. Not everybody gets to weigh in. Everybody might weigh in, but we don't have to choose to listen to every single bit of feedback that we've been given. I really wanted to share these 4 tips because I just think oftentimes the resistance that we can feel can be very overwhelming, and it can feel awfully lonely and isolating. And I'm really hoping that by sitting down and thinking about, especially this last one, reminding yourself that you can't do it alone, thinking about these 6 people or roles. They don't have to be 6 distinct people, but trying to surround yourself with the support that you're going to need, especially if your project's a big one. I'm really hoping that it helps you kind of take back control, so it doesn't feel like you're just throwing yourselves to the wolves every day as you try to see your big vision through. So, as typical, when we are willing to shift the way that we think about other people, we ourselves get better and things lighten up a little bit. So again, just for a quick recap, here are the 4 tips that we've been talking about on this episode today to consider when you feel like you're not being supported by other people. Number 1 is to try not to take it personally. Nothing that anyone ever does is because of you. Number 2, ask more questions. Do your very best to try to clarify where they're coming from, understand what it is that they're actually doubting. And remember that unanswered questions, unresolved concerns, that can come off as lack of support, but it really just means there's something that they're missing. Figure out what it is that they're missing. Number 3, figure out their bottom line. Most people, especially the people that love you, have kind of a baseline thing that they need to have in place for them to feel comfortable for you to keep moving forward. Figure out what it is. Find out what their concern is. Find out what they would need to see happen in order for them to feel better about the whole thing. And then number 4, remember, you cannot do this alone. If this is a big project, a big idea, a big initiative, you're going to need support. Consider the 6 roles that we talked about and see where the people in your life might fill those roles and who those people might be. So as always, when I say I come to you with these solo things, most of the time it's because I'm experiencing this myself. I want you to know that I am, if nothing else, the one role I commit to playing for you is to cheerlead you. Because anybody that's trying to do big things in small towns, I applaud you. It can be very challenging at times, very hard at times. And yet it is people like you, the envelope pushers, the ones that are trying to shake things up. We're the ones that are going to shape the future of our small towns. And I am here for it. I will always be here for it. And so I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that you can share this with other people that you know in your life that are trying to make things happen. And of course, I would love to hear what your ideas are, what your projects are. Always, 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 I want to hear the things that you're working on in your small town. So as always, here's to living big in your small town. And we'll talk with you guys soon. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Small Town Big Talk Show. If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to subscribe on Stitcher, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, and we'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review. The more reviews we get, the easier it will be for other small town friends to find us. We encourage you to keep on living big in your small town because the size of your life is not determined by your zip code.